Jesus never said these 5 things. Welcome to this video, where we will explore 5 things that the world often tells us, but Jesus never said. The world is filled with advice and viewpoints we commonly hear, but do these align with what Jesus truly taught? Together, let's uncover 5 things the world says but Jesus never mentioned in the Bible. These are profound teachings that, when reflected upon, will help us understand the true meaning of life and our relationship with Christ. Follow your heart. Jesus never said that. The world often tells us to follow your heart, to do what feels right, and to chase after your passions and desires. We are encouraged to live freely, do what we love, and follow our emotions. But is following our heart truly the best guide for our lives? The Bible teaches us that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Jeremiah 17 verse 9. We can feel the weight and conflict in this verse. Our hearts, while full of love and deep desires, can also harbor deceit and lead us astray. The heart can be swayed by momentary temptations, transient emotions, and at times, these can cause us to make decisions we later regret. Think about the times in our lives when we acted solely on emotion, perhaps when we were angry, disappointed, or hurt. These feelings can easily lead us into decisions we wish we had not made. That's when we realize that simply following our heart may not always lead us to the right destination. Jesus never told us to follow our hearts. He said, "Follow me." Matthew 4 verse 19. Jesus calls us to follow him, not our hearts or fleeting emotions. He knows that, though the heart is full of desires, it can be easily deceived. Therefore, he invites us to walk a path that is greater, the path of truth and life. When we follow Jesus, we are not merely acting on emotions or personal perceptions, but we find peace in walking in his direction. Jesus is not just a model for us to follow. He is the one who leads us, helping us rise above the storms of our emotions and confusion in life. Jesus doesn't ask us to abandon our emotions or desires. He understands we are human, with hearts full of hopes and dreams. However, he calls us to place our trust in him, to follow his way, and to find a greater purpose in life. When we follow him, he guides us in the right direction, helping us discover more about ourselves, our life's purpose, and the true meaning of happiness. That's why following our heart may lead to chaos, while following Jesus brings peace and lasting happiness. When we live under his guidance, we not only find joy but also a life with purpose, a deeper connection with God. Be true to yourself. Jesus never said that. In today's world, a popular mantra is, "Be true to yourself." This advice encourages us to live authentically, to avoid pretending, and to follow our own desires and inclinations without being constrained by social norms or the expectations of others. It's easy to see the appeal of this message, especially in a society where personal freedom and self-determination are highly valued. However, when we look at Jesus' teachings, we find that he never encouraged us to just be true to ourselves. Jesus said, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Matthew 16 verse 24. Jesus didn't teach us to live according to our own desires but to deny ourselves and follow him. This call is not to live freely according to personal whims, but to live in submission and obedience to God's will. Denying ourselves doesn't mean we have to lose our identity or cease to be who we are. It means we need to gain control over our desires, not let them be driven by selfish ambition or momentary cravings. The sacrifice Jesus calls us to is not about loss but finding. When we deny ourselves to live for Jesus, we find a life with deeper meaning, not one bound by the transient things of this world, but one rooted in eternal purpose. Think of the contradictions we face in life when we live by our own desires without considering God's will. When we pursue personal goals without looking at the consequences or how they affect others, we can easily fall into failure or regret. However, when we obey Jesus and live for him, we find a more peaceful and clearer path. Jesus does not ask us to abandon our true selves, but to forsake the negative, selfish parts of ourselves that don't reflect his love and righteousness. When we deny ourselves and live for him, we become the people God created us to be, with a greater purpose and more lasting joy. Believe in yourself. Jesus never said that. One of the most common pieces of advice people hear is, believe in yourself. This message encourages us to trust in our own abilities, our inner strength to overcome challenges and achieve our goals. This advice is powerful, as it promotes self-reliance and self-confidence. However, when we examine the teachings of Jesus, we find that he never told us to believe in ourselves, but to believe in him. Jesus said, "Believe in me, because I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." John 14 verse 6. Jesus is not just a teacher showing us the way, but he is the only path that leads to salvation. He calls us not to trust in our abilities but to trust in him. Believing in ourselves can lead to self-sufficiency and overconfidence in our abilities that ignores our need for God's help. Jesus never merely pointed us to the path. He is the path. Jesus is not just a choice in life. He is the only way to true life. When we place our trust in him, we not only find salvation, but we also gain wisdom and strength to face the challenges of life. While self-confidence can bring us some success, trust in Jesus brings us eternal life. Let your trust not be solely in your own abilities, but in the boundless power and unconditional love of Jesus Christ. When we believe in him, we are strengthened, guided, and given the ability to live a life that aligns with God's perfect will. In a world that encourages us to rely on our own abilities, we must remember that the true strength to navigate life comes from God alone. When we place our trust in him, he will lead us to victory and eternal life, showing us that our faith in him is the key to all things. These teachings of Jesus challenge the common wisdom of the world. The world says to follow your heart, be true to yourself, and believe in yourself. But Jesus offers us a higher path, one that leads not to fleeting happiness, but to a deeper, eternal joy. His way calls us to deny ourselves, to trust not in our own strength, but in his, and to follow the truth that only he can provide. When we choose to live by his words, we enter a life of purpose, peace, and everlasting fulfillment. Live your truth. Jesus never said that. In today's modern world, there is a popular phrase often used, live your truth. Part of why this phrase has gained so much traction is because people want the freedom to express themselves and live according to what they feel is right. It is seen as a way to live freely, where each person can make their own choices and decisions without adhering to any external standards or rules. However, Jesus never taught us to live our truth. When Pontius Pilate questioned him about his identity, Jesus answered, "I am the truth." John 18 verse 37. The truth of Jesus is not subjective. It is not dependent on emotions or personal changes, but is eternal, unchanging, and unaffected by circumstances. Jesus never invited us to live according to our truth, because personal truths can easily be clouded by fleeting emotions, desires, or wrong choices. We might find ourselves lost when we live by feelings, passions, or the pressures of those around us. That's why Jesus calls us to live by his truth, a truth that frees us from temporary temptations and the fleeting truths the world tries to persuade us to pursue. When Jesus says, "I am the truth," he isn't just implying that he is a part of the truth. He is the ultimate truth. Only by living according to him can we understand ourselves and the world around us more clearly. Jesus' truth brings freedom. While the world teaches that freedom is doing whatever we want, Jesus shows that true freedom comes when we live according to his truth, when we submit ourselves to his guidance and find meaning in obedience. Imagine walking down a road full of obstacles with no directions. This road could be challenging, dangerous, and likely to lead you astray. But if there were a light to guide your way, you wouldn't feel lost anymore. That is what Jesus' truth is like. When we live according to this truth, we can find our way in a chaotic and difficult world. The truth of Jesus is a light that shines in the darkness of life, helping us see what is right and wrong. Analysis and reflection. Living according to the truth of Jesus is not just about following rules or commandments. It is about experiencing and understanding this truth in our everyday lives. It is about realizing that our values are not shaped by the world, but by the foundation laid by Jesus. Jesus is the embodiment of truth. When he lived on earth, he not only taught moral principles, but also demonstrated the truth through his actions. He didn't just speak about love but lived it, and he didn't just preach forgiveness but forgave those who betrayed him. When you feel confused and uncertain about what to do in life, when you face choices between your personal truth and the truth of Jesus, remember that Jesus' truth is not just a statement but a living reality. Let this truth be the light that guides your path. You don't need to search for truth in vague advice or alternative choices the world offers. Jesus' truth is all you need to live a meaningful and free life. As long as you're happy. Jesus never said that. One of the big messages from society today is, as long as you're happy. We are encouraged to seek personal satisfaction, to pursue whatever brings us joy and comfort. There are even times when we may find ourselves doing things just for the sole purpose of achieving a momentary happiness, even though it may be fleeting or artificial. However, Jesus never taught us this. He said, "What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" Matthew 16 verse 26. This shows that the happiness the world seeks is not something that provides lasting meaning and cannot compare to the eternal life Jesus offers. While the world often encourages us to pursue personal happiness, Jesus teaches us that life is not about satisfying temporary desires. He wants us to find true peace and happiness, not through material things or temporary achievements, but through a relationship with Him and the eternal life He promises. True happiness is not about seeking self-fulfillment. It is about living according to God's will and His glory. Jesus never said that we should only pursue happiness for ourselves, but He taught us that we can find happiness and joy in serving and loving others. He said, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." Matthew 20 verses 26 to 28. True happiness is not something you can find by simply looking after yourself. It is found in living for others and for God's glory. This is completely different from what the world teaches. Analysis and reflection. We can certainly find happiness in close relationships, in our work, and in simple moments of life. However, true happiness does not come from seeking personal pleasure. The happiness that Jesus teaches us about is a happiness that comes from serving, from living for others, and from living for God's glory. When we live in this way, not only do we set an example for those around us, but we also find joy in our own acts of sacrifice. Jesus never said that we should only seek personal happiness, but He taught us that when we let go of ourselves and live for Him and for others, we find true happiness. The world may give us temporary joy, but only living for Christ can provide lasting joy and eternal happiness. Remember that when we set our goals to live for Christ, when we live for something greater than ourselves, that is when we truly find fulfillment and lasting happiness. Take a moment to reflect. What values are we living by? Are we following the advice of the world or the teachings of Christ? The things the world teaches may bring us temporary happiness, but only following Christ brings us lasting peace and eternal joy. Let us deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow Him, for only then will we truly find life.